And we're back. Welcome to Another World Audiobooks. Thank you guys for tuning in. Giving this video thing another shot. Again, I would love to hear from you because this honestly is a ton of extra work to be able to do video for the entire episode. So if you guys think it's worthwhile, I'd love to hear from you. Because if it's worthwhile, I'm totally up for doing it. I put a lot of work into the podcast anyway, so doing the video, not a big deal, but I want to know what you guys think. So get in touch, anotherworldaudiobooks@gmail.com, or you can contact me on all the social mediums as well. So getting into a fun chapter here today, a little peek at the tiger. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. And yeah, let's just get into it. Without further ado, I give you the next chapter of Meet the Tiger. Chapter 13. The Brand. She was aghast at the thought. Could she have been living for months and years in the home of the tiger? It seemed impossible, and yet the theory seemed to get more watertight with every second. It would account for Agatha Girton's continual absences abroad, and the letters which came from the Riviera could easily have been fake alibis. But in that case, the trip to South Africa would have been real enough. The tiger would naturally have gone there to look for a derelict gold mine to salt with his plunder, as the saint had explained. And she remembered that Agatha Girton had been away just about the time when the tiger had broken the Confederate bank. So, the tiger was a woman. That was not outside the bounds of credibility, for Miss Girton would have had no trouble in impersonating a man. Patricia had to fight down her second panic that afternoon before she could open the front door and enter the house. It struck her as being unpleasantly like walking into the tiger's jaws as well as walking into his den, or her den. If Miss Girton were the tiger, she would already be suspicious of Patricia's sudden friendship of Simon Templar, and that suspicion would have been fortified by the girl's adventure of the previous night and her secretiveness about it. Then, if Lapping was suspect also, it would not be long before the tiger's fears would be confirmed, and she would be confronted with the alternatives of making away with Patricia or chancing the girl's power to endanger her security. And from all Simon's accounts of the tiger, there seemed little doubt on which course the choice would fall. The tiger must be either Lapping or Miss Girton. The odds about both stared Patricia in the face, and it looked as if Aunt Agatha won hands down. At that moment, the girl was very near to flying precipitately back to the pillbox and surrendering all the initiative to Simon. The thought of his trust in her checked that instinct. She had been so stubbornly insistent on being allowed to play her full part, so arrogantly certain of her ability to do it justice, so impatient of his desire to keep her out of danger. What would he think of her if she ran squealing to his arms as soon as the fun looked like becoming too fast and furious? To have accepted his offer of sanctuary would not necessarily have lowered her in his eyes, but to have refused it so haughtily, and then to change her mind as soon as she winded the first sniff of battle, would be a confession of faint-heartedness which he could not overlook. "No, Patricia Home," she said to herself. "That's not in the book of rules, and never has been. You would have a taste of the soup, and now you've fallen in, you've jolly well got to swim. He wouldn't say anything, I know, and he'd be pleased as punch, for a day or two, but after a bit he'd begin to think a heap, and then it'd all be over, smithereened. And that being so, we'll take our medicine without blubbering, even if the jam is worn a trifle thin. Therefore, Patricia Home, as our saint would say, where do we go from here?" Well, she'd done all she could about Lapping, and she must wait to see what he thought of the evidence. There remained Agatha Girton, and the saint's orders must be obeyed under that heading the same as under the other. Patricia braced herself for the ordeal, and just then her hand touched something hard in her pocket. She brought it out and took a peep at it, the automatic which Simon had given her. It was marvellously encouraging to remember that that little toy could, at the touch of her finger, splutter a hail of sudden death into anyone who tried to put over any funny business. She put it back in her pocket and patted it affectionately. The housekeeper, emerging from the kitchen to see who had come in, informed her that Miss Girton had returned half an hour since, and Patricia felt her heart pounding unevenly as she went to the drawing-room. To her surprise, the door was locked. She rattled the handle, and presently Agatha Girton answered. "Who's that?" "Me, Patricia." "I can't see you now." The girl frowned. "It's important," she persisted. "I want to talk to you." "Well, I'm busy, and I can't spare the time.
come back presently, or if you're upstairs, I'll call on you when I'm ready."
Patricia's fist clenched, but it was no use making a scene. She would have to wait till Agatha Girton came out. But what was this secrecy for? Miss Girton had never before locked herself up in the drawing-room, nor, before last night, had she even spoken so abruptly without cause. It seemed as if she was actually frightened and jumpy. And what was this new occupation which demanded such privacy and such complete isolation? Patricia went slowly up to her room, racking her brain to fit the pieces in the jigsaw together. Was the tiger rattled, after all? Had Simon succeeded as well as that? And was the tiger even then concentrating on evolving some master stroke of strategy that would release the tiger cubs from the net which was drawing round them, and at the same time destroy the man who had come so near to defeating them? They were not beaten yet, but the final struggle was only a few hours away. And was it dawning upon the tiger cubs that they had almost fatally underestimated their opponent? There was no time to lose. Already it was getting late, and Agatha Girton had to be interviewed, and a light dinner bolted before Oris arrived to take her back to the Saint punctually for the attack they had planned. The girl kicked off her shoes, stripped to her stockings, and pulled on her bathing costume. She discarded the light dress she had worn, and replaced it with a serviceable tweed skirt and a pullover. The automatic went into a pocket in the skirt, and a pair of brogues completed the outfit. So clad, she felt ready for anything. It was as she was lacing her shoes that she heard a sound which she had not noticed while moving about the room. It came from beneath the floor, muffled and very faint, a murmur of voices, and the drawing-room was right under her feet. She stood up quickly and tiptoed to the window, but the windows of the drawing-room must have been shut, for she was able to hear better inside than by leaning out. Then Miss Girton was not alone. But the mutter was so low that Patricia could not even distinguish the voices, though she pressed her ear against the floor, except that she was able to make out that both had a masculine timbre. Aunt Agatha's would be one. Whose was the other? The girl realized at once the importance of finding out further details about this conference. If she could get a look at the visitor and overhear some of the conversation, the result might be of inestimable value, for there could be no disputing the fact that all the circumstances combined to adorn the incident with a distinctly fishy aspect. And if the clue provided were as damning as she hoped it would be, and she were caught eavesdropping. The girl drew a long breath, and felt again for the reassuring heavy sleekness of her weapon. She had told the Saint that she could be more help than hindrance to him, and now was the time to prove it. The risk attached to the enterprise would have to be faced in the saintly manner, with a devil-may-care smile and a shrug, and a pious hope that the Lord would provide. "Carry on, brave heart," said Patricia, and opened the door. She crept noiselessly down the stairs, but on the last flight she had to stop and deliberate. There were two ways, the door or the windows. The keyhole seemed easier, but she had just remembered that every board in the floor of the old hall had its own vociferous creak. She would have to spy from the garden. She listened, leaning over the banisters, but the walls and the door were more solid affairs than the floor, and the people in the drawing-room must have been talking in subdued tones. Perhaps they had just realized the possibility of their being overheard. She could barely catch a whisper of their speech. As silently as she had descended, she climbed the stairs again. The door of Miss Girton's room stood open, and she went in, crossed swiftly, and opened the casement windows. This room was on the opposite side of the house to the drawing-room, and just beneath the windows was a kind of shed with a sloping roof. As a schoolgirl, Patricia had often clambered through those windows and taken perilous toboggan rides down the slates, saving herself from the drop by catching her heels in the gutter. Now she was bigger, and the stunt had no terrors for her. Slithering swiftly over the sill, she gathered up her skirt, held on for a second, and then let herself slide. Rotten as it was, the gutter stopped her as safely as it had ever done, in spite of her increased weight. Then she worked herself over the edge, let herself down as far as she could, and let herself fall the remaining 5 feet, landing lightly on the grass below. She doubled round the house, and then she had a setback, for the curtains of the drawing-room windows were drawn, and the windows themselves were closed. This had not been so when she came in. Returning from Lapping's, she approached the house from the drawing-room side, and she could not have failed to notice anything so out of the ordinary, for Aunt Agatha verged on the cranky in her passion for fresh air and light, even in the most unseasonable weather. Had the visitor, then, arrived after Patricia? Or had the curtains been drawn for fear of her nosing round in the garden? That, however, could be debated later. She stole up and examined both the French windows, but even from the inside she could see that they were fastened, and the hangings had been so carefully arranged that not even a hair's breadth of room was visible. She could have cried with vexation. She meditated smashing a pane of glass and bursting in, but a moment's reflection showed her the futility of that course. Simon Templar might have brought it off, but she did not feel so confident of her own power to force the pace, and with two of them against her, in spite of the automatic, she might be tricked and overpowered. At a pinch, she would have made the attempt, but the issue was too great to take such a chance when a man far more competent to deal with the matter was waiting to do his stuff if she could learn enough to show him where to make the raid. And the one certain thing in a labyrinth of mystery was that a man who visits somebody else's house generally leaves it again sooner or later. She looked around for a hiding place, and saw at once the summer house in the corner of the garden. From there she could watch both the drawing-room windows and the front door. No observation post could have been better placed. She sprinted across to it. There was a window ideally placed, half overgrown with creeper, and through that she could see without being seen. Patricia settled down to her vigil. It was about then that her name cropped up in the conversation which was taking place in the drawing-room, but that she could not know. "One little pill, and such a little one," remarked the man who was talking to Agatha Girton, and he placed the tiny white tablet carefully in the center of the table. "You wouldn't think it could make a grown woman sleep like a log for about 6 hours, would you? But that's what it'll do. Just put it in her coffee after dinner. It'll dissolve in no time, and she'll pass out within 5 minutes. Lay her out comfortably on the sofa, and I'll collect her about 11. He was a tall, sparsely built man, and although they were alone, he kept his soft hat pulled low down over his eyes, and his coat collar was turned up to his chin, so that only part of his face was visible.
"You can do your own murdering,"
snapped Agatha Girton in a strained voice, but the man only laughed. "Not murder, I promise you. She's strong, and all she'll get will be a slight headache tomorrow morning. You can't imagine I'd kill such a charming girl." Miss Girton leaned across the table, thrusting her face down close to his, but in the gloom the shadow of his hat brim fell across his features like a mask.
"Swine!"
she hissed. He moved his hand protestingly. "Your newly acquired righteousness isn't wanted," he said. "I'm honestly very fond of Patricia, but I'm afraid she wouldn't take me seriously as things are. Let us say that I propose to apply the rather unconventional methods of Miss Holmes' sheiks."
"I am also very fond of Patricia,"
said Miss Girton. "You ought to tell her," replied the man sardonically. "But mind you break it to her gently. No, my dear, that shouldn't trouble you very much. On a suitable occasion I shall ask Patricia to marry me, and nothing could be more respectable than that." Miss Girton stared.
"Why lie?"
she asked bitterly.
"There are no witnesses."
"But I mean it," persisted the man. The woman's gaunt face twisted in a sneer, and there was a venomous hatred in her eyes.
"Some people say that all crooks are slightly mad,"
she answered.
"I'm beginning to think they're right."
The man lifted his face a trifle, so that he could look reproachfully at her. He ignored her sally, but he spoke again in a soft, dreamy, sing-song tone. "I was never more serious in my life. I have succeeded in my profession. In my way, I am a great man. I am educated, clever, cultured, travelled, healthy, entertaining. I have all the wealth that a man could desire. My youth is passing away, though I still look very young. But I see the best years slipping past and leaving me alone. I love Patricia. I must do this to show her that I am in earnest. Afterwards, she will refuse me nothing." The voice trailed away, and Miss Girton wrenched a chair round savagely.
"Mad,"
she muttered, and he sat up with a start. "What was I saying?" His eyes fell on the glistening white pellet marooned in the expanse of polished walnut. "Oh, yes. Do you understand?" Agatha Girton came close to him again.
"You're mad,"
she rasped.
"I'll tell you so again. With all this money, all this wealth you boast about, why did you have to put the black on me? If you're so rich, what was a mere 20,000 to you?"
"One can never have too much," said the man. "And now, as things have fallen out, it is all going back where it belongs, as a dowry. Anyhow, is 20,000 so much to pay for liberty, and even life? They might manage to get you for murder, you know, Aunt Agatha."
"Don't call me Aunt Agatha."
"Then—"
"Nor that either."
The man shrugged. "Very well, oh nameless one," he said with calculated insolence. "Remember this, nameless one, that I have taken a lot of money from you, but now I want something that money cannot buy, and you will give it to me. Otherwise— But you dare not be stupid." Miss Girton still looked at him with those deep-set eyes of hate.
"I don't know," she said slowly. "For years you have made my life a misery. I've a mind to end it, and putting you where you belong might make them forget some of the things they know about me. The busies are always kind of squeakers."
The man was silent for a short space. Then he put up his hand and pulled his hat a little further over his eyes. He turned his head, but he could only have seen her feet. "I am not like the busies," he returned in a voice that was cold and flat and hard like a sheet of ice. "Don't talk like that, or I might be tempted to put you where you will have no power to threaten me." He stood up and walked to the door, his hands in the side pockets of his coat and his shoulders hunched up. He turned the key and pulled the door open quickly and silently. Leaning out, he glanced up and down the hall, then half pulled the door while he spoke to Miss Girton. "I can let myself out. The lady is upstairs, isn't she?"
"I heard her moving about overhead a little while ago."
He waited a moment as though listening. "Your ears are better than mine," he said, and looked at her warningly. "Do exactly as I told you, and don't try to double-cross me. You mightn't succeed. Good evening." The door closed behind him, and she could hear him moving across the hall. For a moment, she hesitated. Then she crossed the room swiftly and pulled out the drawer of the writing bureau. She felt in the cavity and tugged. When she straightened up, there was a small automatic pistol in her hand. She went to the windows at the front, snapping back the jacket of the gun as she did so, and pushing over the safety catch. The heavy curtains swung away as she jerked at the cord that controlled them, and she saw the man hurrying down the drive. Without looking round, he turned and went down the road to the left, and Agatha Girton opened the French windows and stepped out onto the terrace. The range was about 25 yards, but the hedge at the bottom of the garden was a low one, and his body could be seen above it from the waist upwards. Miss Girton raised the gun, and extended her arm slowly and steadily, as she might have done in a Bisley competition. At that moment, the man turned to the right again into a field, and so his back was squarely presented to her. The echoes of the two rapid shots rattled clamorously in the still air of the evening. She saw the man fling up his arms, stagger, and fall out of sight. Suddenly, she found Patricia beside her.
"Who was it?"
gasped the girl, white-faced and shaking.
"What have you done?" "Killed him, I hope,"
said Agatha Girton coolly. She was standing on tiptoe, gazing out into the gathering dusk, trying to see the result of her shooting. But there was the hedge at the end of the manor garden, and the hedge that lined the field into which the man had passed, both hiding the more distant ground from her, and she could see no sign of him.
"Stay here while I go and see," she commanded.
She walked quickly down the drive, and the automatic still swung in her hand. Patricia saw her enter the field. The man was lying on the grass, sprawled out on his back. His hat had fallen off, and he stared at the sky with wide eyes. Miss Girton put down her gun and bent over him, feeling for the beating of his heart. Patricia heard the woman's shrill scream, and then she saw Agatha Girton standing up, swaying, her hands over her face. The girl's fingers closed over the butt of the automatic in her pocket as she raced down the drive and out into the road. Miss Girton was still standing up with her face in her hands, and Patricia saw with a sudden dread that blood was streaming down between the woman's fingers. There was no trace of the man.
"He was shamming,"
gasped Agatha Girton.
"I put down my gun. He caught me. He had a knife."
"What's he done?" Miss Girton did not answer at once. Then she pointed to a clump of trees and bushes in the far corner of the field, which was not a big one.
"He took the gun and ran that way. There's a sunken lane beyond."
"I'll go after him," said Patricia, without stopping to think of the consequences. But Agatha Girton caught her arm in a terrible grip.
Don't be a fool, child, she grated. That's death. I lost my head. All he said was, don't do it again.
The woman's hands were dripping red, and Patricia had to lead her back to the house and up the stairs. Agatha Girton went to the basin and filled it. She bathed her face, and the water was hideously dyed. Then she turned so that the girl could see, and Patricia had to bite back an involuntary cry of horror, for Miss Girton's forehead was cut to the bone in the shape of a capital T. Oh boy, poor Aunt Agatha. Nice little T in her forehead. That's not what you want. Okay, so pretty short, not tons of vocabulary in this one, but there was one thing that I was not familiar with. So apparently, there's something called an Imperial Meeting. It's basically a target shooting competition organized by the National Rifle Association annually at the Bisley Ranges in England. So it's the oldest shooting competition in the world and is widely regarded as the most prestigious. So when it says that she might have done it at the Bisley competition, that's what it was referring to. So little clarification there. The other thing that I just loved in this chapter was the phrase, You would have a taste of the soup, and now you've fallen in, you've jolly well got to swim. So that's, I guess, yeah, that's one of those quotes that I don't know when I would have need for it, but if I did, I would definitely want to have it. So if you'd have a taste of the soup, and now you've fallen in, you've jolly well got to swim. That's a life lesson for all of us that we can take home and really just pause in. So anyway, I hope you guys are enjoying the book and are enjoying the video element of the podcast. If you are, again, I'd love to hear from you. Please get in touch at anotherworldaudiobooks@gmail.com. And thank you to our patrons. If you have signed up to be a patron, thank you. It is so amazing to have people supporting the podcast in that direct of a way. And the more people we get supporting the podcast, the more we can grow the podcast and continue to expand what we're doing. More video, different types of video, behind the scenes stuff, like all kinds of fun stuff could be in the offing as we grow the Patreon supporters there. So go to anotherworldaudiobooks.com, and there's actually just a button. Click support the podcast to become a patron, sign up, join the citizens of Another World, as we call it. So there's also some perks too. So we've got tons of audiobooks in the backlist. The top level, no one signed up for that one yet on Patreon, but if somebody did sign up for the top level, they get all of the books and all the future books for free as full audiobooks there as well. So listening to my intros and outros, if you want to skip that, you can sign up to be a patron, and you can get all the awesome audiobooks that you could possibly ever want from Another World Audiobooks. So thanks again, guys, for listening. Make sure to share the podcast, tell somebody that you know about the podcast, spread the word, and spread the love. So thanks, guys, for listening, and we'll catch you next week.